how do you handle the silent treatment when somebody is, I guess, unjustly angry with you?
Yeah. And by the way, John Gottman is the one that kind of brought that word stonewalling to the forefront. Are you familiar with his work?
Yeah, I love their work.
He's a pioneer, and I've not met him, but I know people who've known him. But he came up with four things that people do in the middle of conflicts that show that the relationship is about to come to an end. Criticism, let's see, criticism, defensiveness, stonewalling, and contempt. And when people are willing to go into that space, then they're indicating that they're so sour and all that. They just don't want to make any good choices. They don't care. They've lost any kind of optimism. But the stonewalling person, they have so drawn the conclusion that you're such a nobody to me. You don't even warrant me looking at you. Or yeah, if you ask me a question, I'm not even going to respond. Or if I know you need my presence at a certain event or in a certain task, um, I have no willingness, no desire to even accompany you. And I mean, it can be cold. And of course, I tell folks all the time, there's no such thing as no communication. They may not be saying a single word, but boy, are they communicating. And we tend to take it on a personal level. It's like they're saying, "I hate you," or "I think you are a loser." And again, we have to remind ourselves they hate because they hate. That they want you to think, "I hate because it's you." No, you just hate because it's in you to do so.
Mm-hmm.
Or they call you a loser, not because you're a loser, but they call you a loser because, frankly, there's a ton of projection going on there. I feel inept to manage life's problems, but rather than, which is why they're screaming and going to the stone wall and all of that. But rather than admitting that, I'm just going to say, no, you're a loser. You don't know anything about life. And in fact, no, you got that one wrong too. And so the more you can have this objectivity about who they are and where they're coming from, and then what that means to you, then hopefully, fingers crossed, you can bring a sense of objectivity to the equation, and remind yourself, I'm in the presence of an underdeveloped adult. This is somebody who's fixated literally in pre-adolescent thinking, and they have not grown. So, and I don't say that in any kind of insulting way. It's just simply fact. This is the way little bitty children act when they throw a temper tantrum, or when they don't get their way, or when they go off and pout. And it's like, okay, I got it. And you remind yourself it's about them. It sure isn't about me.
Right. And like, how can somebody like get comfortable like with the uncomfortable, like if they're like just sitting with them for like a long period of time?
Well, um, I don't know that we need to make discomfort go away. How do I feel okay? Well, I don't. How do you feel comfortable? Well, this is pretty awkward. It's kind of like if you walk into a room and it's got stale food that's been there for several days. It smells bad. Well, how can I make myself not think that it smells bad? It does. And so when you say how do you not feel uncomfortable, it's like, well, I am going to feel uncomfortable. In other words, allow yourself permission to say, this sucks, this isn't any good, but having said that, I can remove myself from that room with smelly food. In the same way, I can remove myself from the presence of somebody who's going to bring me this quiet disdain and contempt and all the rest. And at some point, it's like, I am not so beholden to this person that I require me to remain in the presence of this person. Whether it means that you go take a 15-minute walk, or whether it means that you get out of their life and never see them again. And
Mm-hmm.
there's a whole lot of options somewhere in between too. But at some point, it's like, if this is the way that individual is going to be, then the consequence for them treating you this way is they get to have me not in their presence. I'm not gonna participate.
I think what happens is people will, especially if somebody's being like if somebody's being super cold to somebody, I think what happens is the person will try and just poke and poke and poke, trying to get them to talk.
Oh yeah.
Bad approach.
uh, Terrible, terrible approach. You know what? Because it's like trying to tug on the rope with a donkey. Um, I mean, literally, that donkey they just get that much more resistant. And because keep in mind that stonewalling itself, and you alluded to it, is a power move. It's their
Right.
way of saying, I'm going to show you who's in charge around here, and it's not you. And so when you say, please quit doing this way or being this way, or come on, we can do better than this, they're over there thinking, it's working.
Mm.
I'm getting what I want. You're about to fall apart, aren't you? And I'm gonna then come and say, see, why would I want to try to engage with somebody who's as moronic as you? And so they win. And so my thinking is, okay, declare yourself the winner. I don't care because I'm not in the game. I'm not going to do that, and it requires you to have your own sense of well-being, separate and distinct from that person, as opposed to being in this codependent trap where you think, no, I've got to have their approval so that I can be okay with myself, because that's the way they're feeling in reverse. It's like, no, I see it for what it is, and I don't feel the need to play that game.
Right. Because at the end of the day, it's like if you give in to what that person is doing and you get all riled up and you begin to question yourself, essentially they're going to keep doing that because they've seen now that, oh, this is clearly working and I can
Let me give
manipulate.
you a real simple little illustration. I have a little 6-year-old granddaughter. And one of the things that I learned was that because she likes to go with pops and go to different things, and so I had to run into the grocery store, and 2 or 3 different times we've been in there. I'll have to tell her before we go in the store. Now we're only going to get a couple of things, and please don't ask me about buying stuff that we don't need to have. And sometimes she just can't stop herself. Well, I want this, pops, and can I have that? No, we only came for these things. Well, one particular time we're in there, and we were at the checkout place, and at the checkout counter they have these little small refrigerators with energy drinks and stuff like that. And she said, "Well, pops, I'm thirsty, and I need something to drink." And I said, "Well, we're going to be home in 10 minutes. We'll get you something there." And she started crying. And then I just said, "Well, honey, remember we talked about this coming into the store. We're not going to do that. We're gonna get on home, and you'll get something to drink there." And she kept on crying, and the cashier was kind of looking at me like, "Sorry about that, sir." Well, by the time we got to the house, she realized, well, that didn't work. That didn't go too well. And all of a sudden, 10 minutes later, we're best friends all over again. Now, see, with a little 6-year-old kid, it's like, well, that doesn't shock me that sometimes you try to push and find out what the edges are and what the boundaries are. And so you just learn how to have confidence. I know what I'm talking about. I'm going to take care of you. We're going someplace good. But when that person's 56 or 72 or 38 or whatever, it's like, you're not a 6-year-old kid anymore.
Right.
And so that's when you want to plead with them and say, grow up or be different. And that's where we go back and say, well, I'm going to remind myself this person is in fixated pre-adolescent development, and they have not grown up. They haven't grown past that 6-year-old stage where the kid's going to throw a tantrum. And so all I can do is just be comfortable with who I am and confident that I'm making a good decision. I don't necessarily feel comfortable, but it's like, no, I know me well enough to know that my heart is right. And that's hard, but it's
Right.
necessary.
You mentioned the word tantrum. I mean, I've often read online and even watching, content that, I think narcissists will also like cry as a way of manipulating you as well. Like talk about that because I think it's tough because at first you're like, I mean, I think people are like how is this person like forcing themselves to cry? And also I think it's so challenging because I think I would say like unless you're a sociopath, like when somebody starts to cry, you can do nothing. You want to do nothing but have compassion for them and give them a hug. How can people handle things like that and other forms of manipulation?
Well, and this is why guys like me and you, we put these videos out because we need to understand what's going on there. If a person is entrapped or ensnared by their own narcissistic tendencies, one of the defining features of narcissism is entitlement. These individuals think, well, I deserve special treatment. And whatever rules apply to everybody else don't apply to me. And so you need to defer to me. You need to conform. And so they have a fixed agenda as to how they're supposed to be treated based on that entitlement plus other things. And then when you come along and say, well, I don't want to enable an inappropriate attitude of entitlement, then they're crying, if that's their mode, because they actually believe, no, I'm entitled. And they claim the victim status. Now, they don't say that out loud, but that's what's going on. You're victimizing me. You're making my life miserable. I don't know what to do. And in their tears and in their protest and anger, what they're really saying is, I don't know how to handle life. I'm inept, and I'm desperate. I've got to have you to live correctly for me, so that I can finally be a stable person. And you're not giving me what I want. And if I'm that healthy individual watching this person decompose like that, I'm thinking, well, bless your heart. There are certain lessons when you were that 6-year-old kid and 8 years old and all that you just didn't learn, you didn't pick up on, and I'm sorry, but that's not my problem. I mean, you're trying to make it my problem. But that individual is they actually do believe, no, I deserve that special treatment. And it's like, well, then you got it wrong. And so yeah, it's so essential to have objectivity to counteract their subjective pull on you.
But when somebody's doing something like crying, like how do you know? Like how can somebody spot the difference between somebody who's like legitimately crying because they're actually like really upset,
Yeah.
or they're doing it with bad intentions?
Well, I just use the word I deserve. And, we each deserve a certain amount of dignity and respect, etc. But the narcissistic person is so needy. For example, let's say for example, I spoke not that long ago with a woman who was talking about a brother who had taken his life. And then she was talking about it in the context of how he had a very difficult relationship with his own father and then with his wife, and he finally decided this isn't worth it. And as she was talking with me, she teared up. And it's like, this is such a tragedy, and I miss him, and there are so many good things about him that just got squashed and all, and it's like, that's legitimate. When you cry at something like that, there's a grief and there's a sense of emptiness that can come there, but you'll notice that it's devoid of entitlement. And so that's where I make my delineation. There's no exploitation that's there, like I'm trying to get something out of you. But there can be a legitimate sadness that can be there, and it can be on small things too. My child had a really bad day at school, and I can be talking to my spouse about that, and I get choked up because I care so much about my child, and that kid's being exposed to bullying, and it can cause you to be choked up. There are times when you have that kind of experience where you want to weep, but it's not there's not a demand that's associated with that. That at least for me, the exploitation, the entitlement, and all that's where I make my delineation point.